Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Brown&Co's lunchtime seminar. My name is Simon Tyndall, and I'm Divisional Partner and Town Planner based in the Architecture and Planning team in the St Neots office. Joining me today are my colleagues who will be presenting shortly and who are also part of our team in the St Neots office. My colleague Lydia Praveen is an Associate Town Planner and will be presenting the first part, providing an overview of the Oxcams Arc. Alex Darby and Will Four will then take over, and they are both senior associates here in the team and architects, and they'll give you an outline of our master planning and architectural capabilities, which we hope will be of some use to you in promoting sites or indeed preparing planning applications. For those of you who don't know, we have architecture and planning teams operating from our Norwich office and our Brigg office, meaning that as well as in the Arc, we have a good coverage of East England and East Anglia. So we thought we'd put together this session as our individual clients and small and medium developers in the area seem to be missing out on some of the information coming out of the government. The idea is to give everybody a brief overview of the Oxcams Arc, provide you with the information about what this means for the area, how this is proposed to be brought forward by the government, and more importantly, how we can help you get involved. So we'd like to use this as the start of a conversation, really, and we'd be happy to take things further from this point, discuss either the topics that we covered today or any other opportunities or proposals that you may have. So please feel free to get in touch, and we'll send around some details after this seminar so that you can get in touch with us and have a chat. Following the presentations, we'll be opening up a short question and answer session as well. So if anybody's got any questions today, please feel free to put them into the box below, and we'll pick up the ones that we can today. Any that we can't get around to, this should be around about 45 minutes to an hour, but any we can't get around to today, we'll send around a post-presentation email with our contact details, and we'll cover some of the questions thereafter. So firstly, I'd like to pass you over to Lydia Praveen, who's going to start with an overview of the Oxcams Arc. Thank you, Lydia.
Hello there, my name is Lydia Praveen, and I'm Associate Planner in the Architecture and Planning team in the St Neots office here at Brown&Co. So today we're going to look at the Oxford to Cambridge Arc and provide information for small and medium developers. By way of introduction, we're going to look at an overview of the proposed Oxford to Cambridge Arc spatial framework. Then we're going to look at whether this is a focus for growth. We're then going to look at the opportunities to engage and shape development in the region, and finally provide a summary. So the Oxford to Cambridge Arc spatial framework. In the 2020 budget, the government committed to developing a spatial framework for the Oxford to Cambridge Arc. And as this map shows, this covers a really broad geographical area, all the way from Oxford to Cambridge, with many areas in between. And you can see the Brown&Co offices in key locations across this arc. So what will the spatial framework do? National government has set out the aim is to develop a long-term spatial framework that aims to indicate locations for strategic growth through spatial planning and provide a plan to 2050 and beyond. It aims to give investors and businesses greater certainty over growth plans and allow communities to shape the long-term future of places across the region. This is what national government sets out the spatial framework will do. So is this a focus for growth? There are key three parts of the arc in the spatial framework. One of these is to identify strategic locations for new homes and businesses. Secondly, enable connectivity and infrastructure, and also enhance the natural environment and taking into account climate change. So here's an example of a strategic location for homes and businesses. This is a residential development of 200 houses and 75,000 square feet of office space on the edge of St Neots. The scheme enhanced the natural environment through landscaping, biodiversity net gain. and also efficiently designed buildings. And this was successfully approved by the local council. And this shows a really key spatial location for growth, which is on the edge of St Neots, right within the heart of the Arc, a scheme that we promoted and put forward the planning application here at Brown&Co. So the Arc aims to provide new homes, and at the outset, the government set out the Cambridge to Oxford Arc was going to deliver 1 million homes by 2050. I still think this is part of their aim to deliver housing, and here at Brown&Co we have the ability to assist landowners with comprehensive schemes, whether it be small, medium and large scale, and these will now need to be in light of the spatial framework. We here at Brown&Co can bring together advice from our internal teams such as agency. We also have a commercial team and professional services which can input into schemes and provide the best advice for landowners based upon the planning policy remit and feeding in with our architectural colleagues. Promoting sites through the local plans is a key area of work here at Brown&Co that we're involved in. There's still the ability to promote sites through the local plan process. It's just that in the future they will need to be in light of the spatial framework. Here's an example of a greenfield site in the local plan that we promoted. We successfully secured allocation for 150 residential units and a hectare of commercial space and secured planning permission. We then subsequently marketed and sold the site with our agency colleagues to a national house builder. So connectivity and infrastructure are also a key part of the Arc, and the government has placed real importance on well-connected sites. East West Rail are currently carrying out consultation on work to the railway, and they've set out the preferred route alignment for a railway station south of St Neots and with a station to the north of Camborne, with obviously Camborne being in the Greater Cambridge local plan area and St Neots South, some of it being in Huntingdonshire potentially, and some of it potentially being in Bedford Borough's jurisdiction. So what does this all mean for developers? The spatial framework will be a spatial specific national policy, and I see this as sitting sort of just below national planning policy, and it will be very specific to the Arc area. Key thing is that local planning authorities preparing local plans will have to pay regard to it, and it will be a material consideration in determining planning applications. We see this as a real opportunity to engage with this summer government setting out that there's going to be a visioning exercise with the opportunity to shape the vision through public consultation. This is a real opportunity to put forward areas of land and sites that we think are good strategic locations for housing or economic development or both, as well as open space and other considerations. This will then move towards a spatial framework in spring 2022, where the government will develop policy and growth options. Then the draft spatial framework will be produced, showing a preferred approach, which will be refined, and the draft spatial framework published for consultation, with the final spatial framework implemented shortly after. So by way of summary, this is a really important part of national government's sort of overall framework for the Arc. There's a real opportunity to engage and shape development in the region through the consultation that shortly will be coming up. And we here at Brown&Co are ideally placed right in the heart of the Arc to assist you if you have parcels of land and schemes that you're looking to develop that can help really shape development in the Arc, and we can put forward on your behalf. The aim by national government is for the Oxford to Cambridge Arc spatial framework to be adopted by the end of 2022-2023, and it will be a key document when considering development proposals. So if you have sites that you wish to let us know about, we can then look at those and put them forward on your behalf as part of the spatial framework consultation. I'm now going to hand over to my architectural colleagues who are going to look more at the design aspects and some new technology, which can really help you in terms of developing your proposals further. Thank you for listening to my part of the presentation.
Thank you, Lydia. Just before we go over to Will and Alex, I think it's important to say that the government intend to bring this spatial framework through relatively quickly, and so it's important to get involved at an early stage and to maintain their involvement throughout the preparation of the framework. As I think it's a really good time to be influencing and swaying the direction of travel. as this document is under preparation. So now over to Alex and Will, our architects, who will just provide an overview of our master planning and architectural capabilities, which we hope will be of some use to promoting sites, as I said before, preparing planning applications. So over to Will and Alex, thanks.
Thank you, Lydia, and thank you, Simon. My name is Alex Darby. I'm a Senior Associate Architect here at Brown&Co, joined by my colleague William Foe, also recently qualified and experienced architect. We're here just to the next 10 or 15 minutes just to talk you through what we can do for you and your sites. We've got some worked examples of projects that we've worked on in recent past and still currently, and hopefully give you a bit of an insight as to the benefits of architects generally, but especially Brown&Co.
Brown&Co is made up of a dedicated team of architects, planners, and master planners who have a wide range of experience across many sectors of the building industry. We're currently based in St Neots. We have offices over in Norwich and Brigg, covering a large area of the east of England. Our team is made up of qualified REBA and CET members who have experience to oversee projects from inception to completion, whether it's small-scale house extension or large-scale airport. Working through the RIBA plan of works, we can provide as little or as much service as required. Whether it's a simple feasibility study of working out how many houses can be accommodated on a parcel of land, to how many apartments an existing building can be converted into. We can project manage from inception to completion, covering planning application through to technical detailing and building regulations drawings. We can oversee the tender process, enabling clients to get the most competitive value, through to managing of the construction contracts in order to match client expectations.
The diagram shown is an illustration of the very many parts of the process that we can be involved with here at Brown&Co. We understand that a lot of the data that we as consultants are operating and using in conjunction with other consultants is of use to developer clients as they're developing proposals for the site. So we can see, and it's already picking up on some of the illustrated items above, certainly cost estimating is certainly one where, we've got an ability to draw off data that is very helpful to the process generally. The kind of projects that we're talking about today are really related to the commercial and residential opportunities of the Oxford Cambs Arc, as Lydia identified earlier, but specifically, our involvement in projects is quite wide-ranging, and if I draw a bit of attention to the images above and a little bit of the text, then we've got very good wide-ranging experience for commercial, single office designs through to strategic sites and business parks, residential experience from sort of single plots through to very large strategic sites with many hundreds, if not thousands, of houses. But also, with residential renovations, listed buildings experience as well, because, some of the sites we're looking at, maybe there's an opportunity for, let's say 3 to 5 houses in a site, but, maybe there's a listed building or a historic asset on the road frontage, which needs, repair and incorporation into that scheme for the benefit generally of, street scene views and the designs itself. Obviously, Brown&Co here, we've got a long history with helping agricultural clients, so we do a lot of projects involved with those, so maybe traditional building type conversions, but also grain stores and experience of things like anaerobic digestion. Entertainment, communal facilities, certainly very important where we've got large scale sites, so there's bound to be things like community enterprise hub type arrangements or community halls, village halls, but also cinemas and things like that on the large sites. Retail shops and supermarkets, again, a lot of experience with those sorts of things. Education and school provision, a lot of experience in Brown&Co with providing education facilities, but also as part of these very, very large master plans, then often, things like primary schools, secondary schools, pretty much a given. We've got experience as well with a certain amount of sort of larger commercial, hotel, travel lodge type facilities. I've done a few of those, and certainly, to the periphery of business parks, potentially it's kind of a use that we often see. But also, and again, tying back to sort of community facilities, sports and recreation, swimming pools, football stadiums, gyms, and similar, pretty much, all bread and butter work for us. But many other examples. And I'm sure if you've got something unusual, you can speak to us. And I'm sure from within Brown&Co, our experience is such that we've worked on something similar in the past, and can help you with it for the future. The way we do it, really, this slide. So we invested quite heavily in some computer-aided design or sort of BIM applications a few years back, and we use those on all of our projects now. The incorporation of that sort of the data set, or the intelligent data set, as I referred to earlier on the slide, very useful for pulling out area calculations, quantities. But also, we can start to look at sort of visuals and get an understanding of what sites look like, before and after schemes are designed, and we're able to draw from that, quite an extensive range of information, which we'll go on to show you now. The models are, fully sort of explorable by clients, but also by third parties. We can we can pretty much present any kind of data that is needed within our normal planning application process. And I think at Brown&Co we've seen great benefit, not only for ourselves but for our clients from that investment. So our software allows us to have a full understanding of the site, the buildings and surroundings. All of these are modelled into the drawing, the model, and then typical. Certainly for the larger scale sites, we've got incorporation of all consultant data. So we've got tree reports, we might have flood risk, we might have sort of items to add in terms of maybe noise parameters. So all of those can be added into the model and used as a basis for the design. But also at the end, we get a generation of 3D walkthroughs and renders, and typical example of a fairly a fairly decent render, we think, just exported straight out of the package in the background here. So now we've got some typical examples and recent works to show you, which highlights the process and some of the sort of the technology that we've inputted into the schemes. So master planning is a big part of our work. So we've got a typical example here, site on the periphery of a village. So we're starting to look at what's in place at the moment, where the site is and what the external influences to that might be. From that, we might develop a little bit of a concept of site analysis, showing where the specific items of value to the site are. We might have tree belts, existing landscaping. We're inputting into or starting to input into our sort of notional model the important parameters of consultant input, maybe trees, noise, ecological analysis of existing building types and things like that. From there, a concept scheme looking at traditional alignments, perhaps terrace housing or similar, depending on the local context, incorporating buffers, tree belts, acoustic noise barriers against perhaps the main road in this instance. And then developing up from that essentially I suppose a 3D model, which has in this case been softened with sort of a bit of pen and ink work to give a little bit of an idea of the scale, context, setting, and landscaping of a typical scheme. So if we were to say, here is a typical scheme that's been run through by Brown&Co, then we've got I think it's 5 to 6 houses in this location, gone through the processes I've outlined before, and then we've taken further. Obviously, in this case, it's been constructed from building regulations and construction type drawings, and these have been marketed by the developer and sold relatively recently, and obviously photographed by us, but showing a scheme completed. So some other examples of schemes, similar vein of incorporation of different graphical techniques as well to highlight the process. But master planning, I think a site on the top left, I think it was somewhere between 30 and 40 dwellings, and we've also got a little community centre in the foreground there. Going clockwise at the top, incorporation and development of scheme of 15 houses, sort of using a context of an existing barn on the frontage, as I talked about earlier, but then developing up a model that's got various house types sitting in a quite nice scheme at the back. Bottom left, then we've got a preliminary feasibility study for the redevelopment of a just outer city centre site, mixed use. We've got residential, apartments, some housing, and some other commercial type units being developed there. And then bottom right, representation of a sort of a market square in a development of a quite large new town that we were looking at, bringing into context the sort of the use of a 3D model, plans, sections, elevations drawn from the above model, and the 3D rendering of that, is useful for consultations with the client, but also with planners, and wider to that is also helpful in the marketing of that if we went on to sell it. We can extract direct from at any point really in the development of the model, and sort of finish those off essentially in a secondary piece of software. But this is a fairly typical export. And then this is some current work we're just looking at this week. The scheme is being presented, or has been presented, for consultation. And again, Brown&Co have systems in place to allow that sort of pre-consultation with parishes especially, but also neighbours, prior to submittal of planning applications. Planning colleagues be able to provide a little bit more information about this, but it is important when you've got these large schemes, which could potentially provide some reason for discussion with local bodies. So I mean, this one in particular is a care scheme, so I think we've got up to 60 assisted living type bungalows and houses on the site here, and also sort of a wellness hub with a hydrotherapy pool and hall and cafe and apartments over. And so from the 3D model again, and obviously from design experience, we've developed up a sort of a graphical image of that, how that might look. Then this is just to look at a commercial project. So this commercial project that client of ours wanted us to look at last year, so planning architecture led, the re-siting of a company who's wished to relocate. So fairly fast track development of an industrial building, and that was constructed last year. I think they're in occupancy as of February or March this year. So again, generated and obviously drawn out, important to see and be able to understand the context of these buildings. Here we had not a listed asset, but we had a Second World War hangar behind, and listed buildings sort of off the site, but important to be able to draw exact data from the model as to the heights of these things, where they sit in the context, in the landscape context, and otherwise to answer questions that we often get from clients especially, but obviously from planners, about where all of these things are going to sit, where they sit in the terrain, how high they are, what impact is that going to be if you're viewing it from an adjacent field or an adjacent roadway. So again, very critical nowadays to have everything accurately drawn out, so that these questions can be answered accurately. I hope that's given you a bit of an insight about the projects that we've been involved in to date, but what can we do for you moving on from this presentation? Well, we can assist with any of your commercial projects, certainly residential new build. The size of those is not critical to us. We can deal with anything fairly small up to very large. certainly any projects that require master planning support from our specialist master planner, greatly received. But we've also got a lot of experience with conversions of existing buildings, be it barns, office buildings, or existing privately used industrial type buildings. Please feel free to give us a call anytime, speak to Will and I. We'll be glad to assist you with your project.
Thanks very much there to Alex and Will. A really good overview. Particularly, I think, with reference to the Oxcams Arc there, the part about master planning, and just picking up on one of the questions that has come in about the benefits of master planning at an early stage in the process. Just moving on from Will and Alex's presentation. I think that certainly a master plan at the early stages will help focus the mind on the design, and design is one of the things that is going to be particularly important, I think, in the Oxcams Arc. The government have set out their stalls there and said that the focus is going to be on design, but it also helps. It also helps show the council that the site is deliverable, and it certainly, from my agency colleagues' point of view, will help quite a bit with assisting on the valuation of the site, and obviously that's where we want to go with things. So yeah, an early master plan at an early stage of proceedings, I think, is a really good investment. We've had a couple of more questions come in, and what we'll do now is we'll cover those, and yeah, if anybody's got any more questions, then please feel free to pop them into the box in the bottom. We'll try and cover those that we can in sort of the next 15 minutes. And then any that we don't get to cover, as I said earlier, we'll cover those and send them out on the following email. So yeah, the first question, this is probably one for Lydia and I, but how do we see the spatial framework being implemented, and what will this mean for planning applications and decision making? Lydia, do you want to pick up on that one?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so just in terms of the spatial framework, obviously this is specific to the ARC, but I see this as sort of sitting below national planning policy. And it's going to be a key consideration, particularly when formulating local plans and planning decisions being made, basically are going to be based upon this spatial framework. And I think it's really important for local people to buy into this, along with local authorities and developers, and really see the spatial framework consultation as a real sort of opportunity to sort of engage and shape the vision for the ARC, and if they want to let us know about sites that are looking to develop or planning applications within or outside the ARC, then we'd sort of be happy to assist and take it forward.
I think one of the other questions that we've received really is one that we've been asking ourselves in the office quite a bit recently, and it's about where we think that new development is going to be located within the ARC. And I think there are quite a few unknowns at the moment, particularly with the unknown nature of the east-west rail line, and the western end of that is pretty certain and already in place, and then from, I think, Milton Keynes across to Bedford, that's pretty well planned out to know where the stations are going to be there. But I think once you get to Bedford, the Bedford-Cambridge part, the routes, there is a preferred route, but the transport hubs certainly are the unknown there, and yeah, it's something that we've discussed long and hard in the office about trying to second guess where these transport hubs will go. But have you any thoughts on that, Lydia?
Yeah, so like you said, it's sort of an ongoing conversation with the ARC. Obviously, it's been ongoing for quite a long time for some people, but equally some people will be quite new to it. I still think to some extent national governments see it as assisting with sort of their target of building 300,000 homes a year. There's obviously quite a lot of pressure for house building in London and South East, given the jobs in the region. I think originally when national government came up with the concept, it was to some extent based on the expressway, which to some extent has been scrapped. And then obviously the East-West Rail, like you've outlined. I think the vision's developed quite a bit further in the last year or two, partly because they recognise it's been going on for a long time, but equally with sort of the implications of COVID-19 and looking more at physical and digital connectivity and more of a sort of like green and economic hub strands that have come forward a lot more. So I think locations for new development will be around the transport hubs, such as Camborne and stations as south of St Neots, Tempsford region, but also within and around the existing towns within the ARC, such as Bedford, Sandy, Cambridge, St Neots being a key sort of transport link as well, focusing on that sort of connectivity side. And then obviously they're going to want to, the local authorities, make sure that there's access to services and facilities either created from new towns potentially or adjacent and within those towns, really.
Mm-hmm. Although the road scheme has been scrapped, you know, the Grand Road scheme, you know, we still do have the Black Cat through the Cambridge scheme, which is, you know, it's close to getting underway now. And as we said before, we have the rail line where we broadly know the location. So we can certainly start to make some calls about where these developments are going to go. Some of them, of course, are cross-border developments between local authorities, as you mentioned earlier in your presentation, Lydia. So I think the framework will draw together some of these local authorities and almost force them to work together, particularly St Neots South. You know, you could be talking about 3 local authorities working together to deliver a scheme sort of south of St Neots. And so, yeah, it's all about ensuring that you're up to date on what's happening with this the Oxcams framework, and to a certain degree ensuring that you are you know, our clients are making representations and steering the discussion. So I think that's particularly important. Looking at let me see some of the other questions. Just one for our architectural colleagues. Could you expand a bit further on the requirements of setting up a site model in terms of whether a full survey is required when undertaking feasibility studies before the more serious development of designs? I think this sort of follows on a little bit from the importance of a master plan, really, doesn't it, Alex?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, I say we always consciously have a look and see what we need to deliver at each stage, but it can be very site specific, of course. Some of our larger, let's say, greenfield type sites where you have boundaries or requirements for things like maybe tree belts and things, they're almost the ones where you need to be a bit more serious a bit sooner, but actually are the ones perhaps where you've not got quite the constraints that some of these sort of more urban sites are. I mean, I suppose specifically I'd say that wherever there's questions involved in perhaps height data, topography such requires or suggests that your site's going to be higher or lower than others, where there's neighbours and possibility of interactions, then yeah, it's good data. And certainly then, as we are seeing pre-applications and obviously later on proper planning applications, it's best to present the data as as thoroughly as you can. Certainly, colleagues, I think Lydia and Simon would agree. If you've got any kind of conceptual issues or height issues with buildings, and you're suggesting perhaps this is a scheme of let's say it's apartments, you're going up to sort of 2.5 stories perhaps, but you've got nearby houses which may be higher up the slope, then you can obviously say that there's no maybe overbearing impact. Whereas if it's the other way around, then you've potentially you're getting feedback which might be negative. And obviously our aim, of course, in development of any schemes, and I suppose Simon, Lydia and colleagues' presentation of any ideas to to planners to get pre-app is to get positive comments and obviously use that as leverage in the process and the development of the designs thereon. But I suppose for us then, yes, great, we always want to work with the most sort of accurate data available, but we'd always advise that I suppose what we consider we actually need to do the job at hand, and it may well be that that's something that develops later.
I think also a good quality survey underpins other surveys that come forward thereafter in the graphical representation. So
indeed,
the ecology survey or the tree survey, like you said, where a tree belts, where are the trees located. If you've got a good quality topographical survey that pinpoints the locations of all of those along with the heights, and of course there are new.
Simon, we are doing a few at the moment where we are almost ensuring that there's no issues with flooding before we do any drawing work at all, and so obviously the topographical survey that picks up those points to allow perhaps preparation of an initial flood report is almost the first thing, and that's ahead of everything else. So obviously that's good information for us then when we're developing designs from that point on.
No, that's great. Thanks, Alex. So I'm conscious that we did want to keep this seminar short and snappy, and don't want to take up too much of everyone's lunch hour going through questions. So what we'll do is, the rest of the questions that we've received, we will we'll answer those and we'll get back to you by email. We'll also send around a post-seminar email with all of our contact details. So if there's anything specific that we've covered today and you'd like to delve into it a little bit further, or you'd just like to keep contact so that when the Oxcams ARC consultation does come round, we can keep hold of your details and get in touch to see if there's any comments that you'd like to make. So thanks everybody for joining us today, and thank you. Bye bye.